For more on this, we're joined by retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmit, who's also the former Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for Military Affairs. General Kimmit, great to have you with us.
Thanks.
The big question is, we know that, days away from Mosul being liberated, obviously the U.S. has had a heavy hand in this. What is essentially next for the coalition at this point? Are they going to continue to have a presence there? And are they going to continue their advise and assist mission?
Well, that really depends on the Iraqi government itself. If they want the coalition to stay, that will give them the permission to stay. I don't think all 60 countries will say, for them, the mission is over. Now, there still is some military work to be done, taking the coalition and taking the troops out to the border. But what is really needed at this point is a coalition of international assistance. If you take a look at this mural behind you, the amount of devastation, not just at the Grand al Nuri Mosque, but in the entire city, and what Nicole said earlier, there is a significant amount of work that needs to be done for humanitarian relief, rebuilding, bringing in governance. In many ways, winning the war is the easy part. Winning the peace is going to be much harder.
And we know, of course, I want to pivot to Raqqa for a second and I want to talk about some of the lessons we have learned about fighting Daesh in Mosul and what the U.S. has learned from fighting Daesh in Mosul and how that can be applied to the liberation of Raqqa.
Well, probably the most significant part of how the Iraqis fought in Mosul is that the coalition nations, all 60 of them, provided the support, the artillery support, the intelligence support, the advise and assist. It was the Iraqi army and their counterterrorism service and their federal police that did the fighting. In Syria, it's going to be a little bit different. We have some good rebel groups, but certainly nothing of the capability that we had inside of Iraq. It's going to be a smaller group, so in many ways, they're going to need more assistance in terms of intelligence support and in terms of air support, artillery support.
I want to talk about Tabqa for a second in Syria. For our viewers, it's about 40 kilometers outside of Raqqa where the fighting is taking place. But we've seen more of a presence among the United States and also these SDF forces. Is it a bit strategic that the U.S. is there? Because we know that the U.S. envoy Brett McGurk was just there, a few days ago. What does his presence in Tabqa say about what the U.S. is doing?
Well, again, I need to emphasize that this is not just the U.S., but it is the 60-nation coalition. Rupert Smith, the British deputy commander, was there as well, right by Mr. McGurk. But what McGurk was doing inside of Tabqa was in many ways setting the conditions for what we should be doing and will be doing in Raqqa, talking to the SDF forces, taking an assessment of what's going to be needed in humanitarian operations, assuring them that he doesn't want to see all the groups fighting among themselves after the liberation is done. So in many ways, Tabqa is a rehearsal for Raqqa post-Mosul.
Okay. And in terms of what this says about the Trump administration's stance on fighting in Syria and essentially having a bit more of a presence, maybe stepping in a little bit more than the Obama administration did, what can we understand about the U.S. policies here?
Well, oddly enough, inside of Syria, it is not that much different than the Obama administration. At this point, we will not see American troops in the fighting, perhaps some advise and assist, but the model has worked. Let the local forces do the fighting, America and the coalition nations do the supporting. I would hope that the United States gets involved in the diplomatic negotiations because that's going to be the next hardest part. We haven't been part of Astana. Other countries have been, but if we really want to ensure that, as I said about Iraq, that we not only win the war, but we win the peace and resolve the problems inside of Syria by transitioning out Bashar al-Assad and getting the people of Syria to come back to their country, rebuild their country. I think that's the most important thing the United States can do and its coalition partners can do as well.
You mentioned that Tabqa is essentially maybe a bit of a litmus test for Raqqa.
Yeah.
But the question is, I don't think it's a question of if Raqqa is going to fall. It's a question of when Raqqa is going to fall. And the question is, who controls it after it falls?
Well, that is the right question, because there are a number of countries and their rebel forces that will lay claim to it. And that's why I think Brett McGurk was in Tabqa, because I think he wants to establish ahead of time that there will be no specific group that can claim victory in Raqqa. Obviously, the Turkish-backed rebels have a claim on it. Obviously, the Syrian coalition-backed rebels have a claim on it. The people of Syria themselves have a claim on it. We can't let another fight start after we've defeated ISIS.
General Kimmit, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.